Welcome back to Ad Age's TV Pivot. I'm Jeanine Poggi, Senior Editor here at Ad Age. Thank you for joining us. For the second half of the day, I'll be having one-on-one conversations with the sales leaders of the CW and Univision, followed by a roundtable with agency leaders from Horizon Media, Omnicom, and Magna Global for a conversation on the state of the TV marketplace. Next up, we have Rob Tuck, Executive VP of National Sales at the CW. Hi, Rob.
Hey, how you doing, Jeanine?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Good. Glad I can join you, given the times we are in right now.
Yeah. Where are you working from right now?
I am hunkered down in Woodbury on Long Island, and I have to say it's quite a good CW satellite office.
How's working remotely been? What is kind of your dynamic? You don't have little ones home, at least, but what's your dynamic been like?
Yeah, I don't have little ones. It's actually been pretty good. I do find the workday is a lot longer. It starts a lot earlier. It ends a lot later. But I feel like we're getting just as much done. I was quite honestly, I was a little surprised. We had never really worked remotely. We were all thrown into this new situation, given, the pandemic. And I couldn't be happier with my crew and everything that has gone on. I think the clients, the connections with the clients has been great. So it's all working.
Good. Well, much of the messaging that we've been hearing over the last 2 days, during this event, has been this phrase of "we're ready when you are, we're ready to go to market when the clients are ready to go." The CW, renewed, of course, much of its current programming for next season. But with productions on pause, how do you strike deals with so little clarity on, when those can resume? And then, of course, more broadly, there's the questions of, when live sports will come back and things like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as you said, we obviously picked up 13 of our returning series in January, basically at the same time we announced that we were picking up Superman and Lois and Walker. They were going straight to series. Actually, just yesterday, we announced that we were picking up Kung Fu and Republic of Sarah that are also going to go straight to series. We've been really busy acquiring product from the streaming world and international markets. And our goal has really been to make sure that we can provide our viewers and our advertisers an original lineup of different series, whether they be scripted, whether they be reality projects. And I think we have accomplished that goal. We've been definitely busy in the programming space, looking at everything, and I think we've got a good stable now.
How much relies, for deal making on the actual lineup itself and the actual programs themselves? Like, how much flexibility is there if some of these shows can't get shot on time or things like that?
I think we deal with what we know. I mean, we are definitely in a situation where nobody has experienced this. We are at the mercy of the government of two countries, since we do shoot out of the U.S. And until everything is up and running and ready to go, we'll have to deal with it. But I do think you can do deals with some flexibility in terms of programming. But again, we're really focused on the fact that we've got some things that are ready to go. And we'll be ready to go at the start of the fall season, and then some other things that are going to kick in throughout the year, which is typical of how we approach the entire year.
Realistically, how much of ad commitments do you expect to actually be made during the usual or semi-usual time frame, and how much do you think will maybe be pushed into scatter or calendar? At this point,
I mean, it's hard to tell the amount, where the upfront will lie, what will go to scatter. I mean, I think as we look at all clients, certainly there have been some clients that have been heavily impacted by the pandemic. There are other clients that are actually doing quite well during this time. So I think, it's going to depend on the client. I don't really get myself too concerned about whether it comes in upfront or scatter. Each and every year, we do have a little bit of churn with our advertisers. Some go to, some start with us and they're in scatter, and then the next year we get them in the upfront, and vice versa. And so I think, we'll have that same situation this year. But again, when all is said and done, we actually look at the entire year. I'm really not concerned whether it comes at upfront time or it comes during the scatter markets.
So are you expecting, a longer term hit to ad revenue? Do you think things will get worse before they get better?
I mean, I think as you look at stuff now, I could tell you, when we went home and everybody departed the city, as we're here in New York, in March, and the early days of April, there certainly was a lot of issues with clients and spending and needing to get their messages off, some clients needing to get their messages on, but we handled each and every client's needs individually. And I think, we did, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I think we did a great job as a network handling everybody's requests. At the same time, we needed to make sure that our business was, running smoothly, and we had everything that we needed. So, I think everything comes on an individual basis.
Have things improved since those days of triage? I feel like things were probably moving more of like an hour by hour, day by day, pacing. Has that changed? Has the speed changed? Are you hearing fewer requests for, changes in TV plans than you were maybe in those first couple of weeks?
Yeah, we definitely, it's almost night and day. I mean, I really think this entire business came together. Everybody got settled in. We dealt with the major problem that was on hand, at the end of March, beginning of April. And I do think now things are settling in. They are settling in for us. I would imagine for the other guys too. It is options time right now.
I was just going to ask you about that. We are hearing, some advertisers, some of the big advertisers taking advantage of third quarter options. How much are you seeing them canceling commitments? Is it more, I wouldn't be surprised, but is it more unusual than perhaps this time other years?
I think our options are going to come in as we had expected, and that was pre-COVID. So a year ago, we had no clue what was going to be upon us at this time. So I think we're tracking along the lines that we had assumed. I will say this, that the scatter market in third quarter, and even for the most part, some of the advertisers that are doing pretty well. It's you use that carefully, but doing better, doing better at this time, have been active. And so it's been a good balance of clients looking to come out, other clients looking to come in. I even commend the agencies because I think they themselves have known that there's some clients within the agencies that have needed a lot more help than others. And I think they've been able to solve some of their own problems when we've matched up one client looking to get out, another client looking to get in. So I think it's worked really well. But scatter has been, for third quarter, has actually begun to pick up. We've been doing it for a little bit now. And I would suspect, as time goes on, it'll become more positive as businesses try their best to get back to normal.
Right. Flexibility, we've been talking about, the past 2 days, probably one of the keywords of the year. How do you expect flexibility to play a part in deal making? Does it look different than it has in years past?
Yeah, flexibility, I mean, it is one of the key attributes for the upfront. We do give clients options, so it does allow them the ability to cancel certain amounts throughout the year, which I think is an advantage there. We have been speaking with a lot of clients now We have definitely been hearing the word flexibility, but it's come in two forms. Interestingly enough, it's actually come in the form of cutting. And can we, we have maybe a closer lead time to air to cut. And then at the same time, clients are looking to possibly do expansions on their deals because of the fact that timing right now may not be perfect for them. So, once we get into negotiations and we discuss everything we need to discuss as far as an overall deal for individual clients, that stuff comes up, and we're happy to listen. We're happy to make changes, provided that it still works for our business. We've got to make sure that our business isn't getting impacted as well, and and the most flexibility you can give anybody if they're really stuck on committing is obviously the scatter market, where we participate 52 weeks a year.
Right. Do you think the pandemic will impede innovation in things like advanced advertising or moving away from demos and audience targeting and things like that? Like, is now the time that you think advertisers will actually want to experiment more in those areas? Or do you think they're kind of like, all right, let's just get business done. Let's try to figure out how to stay afloat and stick with the tried and true?
Yeah, I think even when we look at our schedule and, we're going to make an announcement soon, and just to bring back the 13 shows that we did for a year ago. And I think there's something about stability now. I think it's important. This business is going to change. This business has been talking about change for some time, and certainly well before COVID even came around. And I think it will continue to do so. The business certainly needs to figure out a measurement that is a multi-platform measurement versus what we are dealing with right now. And at the same time, I know that there's a load of data plays. We partner with all of our all the platforms in the digital space where we have deals with, and there's certainly data deals. Data that's being included there. The agencies certainly have a lot more data than we could ever imagine, and I think that will be a part of it. But there's a part of me that thinks that this year maybe we try to go with a little more of the tried and true. Certainly at the beginning, get ourselves back to normal, and and go from there.
Yeah. So the CW's audience perhaps maybe looks a little bit different than some of the folks that we've talked to over, the last 2 days in terms of consumer behavior, especially during this time. A lot of the migration to OTT and streaming, of course, has been happening, seeing it more ramped up as people are home and, watching more content. What have you seen in terms of consumer behavior from like your audience, and how is that impacting, if at all, sort of the sales strategy or how you're thinking about streaming and OTT and all of those places?
Yeah, we, keep in mind, we are first and foremost, and I think we were the first multi-platform network that's out there. We utilize each and every platform that we have, whether it be linear or digital. Certainly OTT is a big part of this network at this point. It's important for everybody, but I think when you look at what we are doing and where we are heading, and a lot of what's been happening now as people remain home, we right now have the full stack this year of Batwoman, Nancy Drew, and Katie Keene. That's the first time for us. It's on all of our digital platforms. We've seen some nice growth there as the consumer gets caught up. Next year, when we bring in Superman and Lois, Walker, Kung Fu, Republic of Sarah, the CW will have 8 series that we will have the full stacks on as we go into we go through the 2020 season. So we certainly are adjusting ourselves to that approach where the consumer gets locked into a particular show and really wants to try to watch it from beginning to end.
Do you think we'll see more dollars shift away from linear into OTT and streaming at this point? It's obviously been happening. Do you expect, more of it this year?
I mean, I think we're different. I think we're different in that regard because we don't really view it as TV or digital or OTT. We certainly can sell each of the platforms individually. We do,
Right.
but most of our clients tend to take advantage of the full multi-platform offering. And if it ramps up on the OTT side, that's fine with us. I mean, we do see a lot of our audience OTT makes up a big part of our digital audience right now, and it's a great experience. And if you think about OTT, I mean, where is it?
Right.
It's back on the TV. So you can call it what you want, but it is back on the TV. It's a great experience. It's sight, sound, and motion in people's living rooms and dens on a big screen. It's something that I need because I can't see, so I like it bigger. And it's a good experience, and that's the way a lot of these shows were created, with a bigger screen in mind.
So, I mean, right now at this point, what would you say is the biggest challenge for the marketplace in sort of getting out of this period?
I think that we certainly both sides have taken the right steps to getting ourselves somewhat back to normal. I think we'll see more and more of that through third quarter. The upfront is looming. This is upfront week, but we don't have the typical presentations that we've all done in the past. I think we're all getting our messages out. My sales crew has been out. They have been doing these type of meetings on Teams and WebEx for weeks now. The engagement and the participation from our clients has been tremendous, and I think that's a good thing for this business, for all of us to begin to move forward. Right. And I think as far as the upfront is concerned, as we started this conversation, we're going to be ready. I think we'll see some clients, some agencies ready sooner than others, which is understandable given the impacts that some of the clients and the roster of clients that are within these agencies. I think the more we can move forward, get back to business as usual, I think the more we can get to the point where production begins. Everybody will have that sense of stability again, and comfort that things are getting back to normal.
Yeah. What do you think might be, just to wrap up, one of the long-term impacts of the pandemic on the industry?
I will be honest with you. I was a big skeptic of working remotely. I think that, at the beginning, I wasn't really quite sure how it would work. But I do think each and every one of our groups and departments, we've pulled this off. We pulled this off in a really short amount of time. We are truly functioning as a network. The sales group is doing everything that they normally do. They're just not in the office. And I think that's a great thing. Planning has had their calls and conferences, and traffic is doing their stuff. So all facets of our business are truly working remotely, which is great. I think people are communicating better than ever. I think that, one of the things that's important to realize now too is, even connecting to clients. I mean, you may not have to get on an airplane all the time to go show up at a client's office, wherever they may be in the US. And you can actually just create one of these, Teams calls or WebEx or Zoom or whatever you're using, and everybody's within reach at a moment's notice. And I think that's probably a pretty good thing for this business. I think it's a good thing for everybody, because there's nobody that's unreachable at this point. And I think it is definitely working. It's working pretty well.
Well, thanks, Rob, for joining us. Appreciate it.
This was great. I appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Next up, we have Steve Mandala, President of Advertising Sales and Marketing at Univision. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Jeanine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're just all kind of amazed you're still going here.
I'm still chugging along.
You should raise money through a telethon or something.
You know what? How I figure it is this week I would normally be like running around, crazily through the city and like in traffic and standing in a bunch of lines and trying to connect to Wi-Fi for like most of the week. So, at least I'm not stuck in all that traffic.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for joining. We've been talking to a lot of folks over the last couple of days about consumer behavior and audiences, and I'm curious, how the pandemic has impacted Univision's audience and sort of what you've seen in terms of changes of consumer behavior.
I don't think that our audience has responded terribly differently than anybody else's has. We've seen greatly increased viewing on our linear networks as well as through all of our digital platforms too. So I wouldn't say that there's anything very different there, but I would point out that we were experiencing tremendous audience growth prior to the advent of COVID-19 and the effects that we started all feeling in mid-March. Our audiences across our networks represented the fastest growing group of networks in all of television. So we've seen certainly a surge since then, particularly around news programming and in prime time. But at the same time, we were seeing those accelerations even before this.
Okay. So, what then has been the impact on the Spanish language marketplace? Are you seeing the same level, the same initial reaction of like triaging and all of that initially? Yeah. And, what have you seen since after those, first couple of weeks?
Well, I certainly think the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks represented a lot of emotion for people and a lot of anxiety. Advertisers and their agencies representing them who were completely navigating an unknown terrain. And so a part of that, I think, led to a lot of sort of emergency crisis kinds of conversations. I would just say that since that time, I think that there's been a steady continuation of both advertisers and agencies trying to get refocused on, okay, what comes next? What are the business needs that are next in the next 30 days, 45 days, 90 days, beyond that, and more strategic planning that's going on than there were certainly in those first 3 weeks, which is all to be understood. I won't say that we're at a new normal yet, but I think that that tone has changed, and I think people are feeling more settled about it than ever before.
Are you hearing, or what are you seeing as it relates to third quarter options? We're hearing about perhaps a higher volume than normal for actually, utilizing those options. Is that what you're seeing, and anything noteworthy in terms of compared to this time prior years?
Yeah, in discussing options, I would divide the question into two parts. The first is around options related to entertainment. On those options, I think we're going to see options greater than what prior years have been, for sure. And I don't think we exactly know how big they're going to be yet. We've got a lot of advertisers who are asking for additional time to make decisions around those. As it looks right now, they're a little bit below what we would have anticipated and what we projected, but I don't think we've seen the full story there yet.
Okay.
On Q3
when at what point do you expect the full story to sort of take shape? Like how far out are they asking to go? Like when do you expect a real better read on this?
I expect by the end of May that we have a very good read on it. I think there are going to be certain categories too that we're going to see a greater impact from. Anything related to travel,
of course,
leisure, luxury goods, I think are going to be more trepidatious about making those commitments firm. Now, on the other hand, as I said, to divide the question into two parts, I think the second part is around sports. We're bringing back live sports starting actually this Saturday with the German Bundesliga soccer, which we're really looking forward to getting live soccer back on our air.
Yeah.
the Mexican League, which is the top-rated soccer in the U.S., irrespective of language, looks like it's coming back on Friday, July 10. And so what we're anticipating for third quarter is very light options related to sports, because we're going to have good live sports on our air in the form of soccer in third quarter. And I think there's a lot of demand right now for live sports.
What are the contingency plans if either some content can't be produced, for the fall, or we don't see live sports come back in the way perhaps we're really anticipating? What are the contingency plans there? And how do the advertisers, even those who maybe are ready to make those commitments, how do you strike deals in an environment that feels so uncertain?
Well, let me start with your last part of the question about how do we strike deals that make sense. I think we strike deals there in the same way that we do in everything else right now, and that is we've got to be flexible, and we've got to look for collaboration and some cooperation as we navigate through things that none of us expected. So it's hard to define business terms on things that are completely unknown to us. But as it relates to the program development, I would say again we're in a different ball game. I certainly understand our brethren at other networks have really definitive problems with their supply chain. For us, we either produce or co-produce almost 80% of our own primetime programming. We know exactly what our grid is through January of 21, and we have probably 50 to 60% of it that's known through the end of 21 at this point. So it's we have a really secure supply chain in our content. But as it relates to sports, these are plans right now, and they're plans that are being worked on. There are plans that are getting firmed. Again, Bundesliga starting Saturday, that's no longer a plan, that's reality.
Right.
The Liga Mexicana that's starting on July 10, they're setting that in motion to be able to start practicing pretty quickly in Mexico. So we feel pretty secure about them, but if something happens, we're going to have to be flexible with our advertisers and for their benefit.
Right. I know that the messaging for Univision over the last couple of years, you talk a lot about, the money coming out of general market and how the marketplace should be thinking in that way. How are those efforts going? What are those sort of conversations right now, especially in this environment? Like, can you have those conversations about general entertainment dollars in a, marketplace like this?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a tough conversation to be able to get people's attention on almost any day of the week. I think it's particularly tough right now. That said, we're still being very successful in it. It's just it's tougher to do. The basic argument is this: the Univision network is ranked as the 5th most viewed network out of 138 rated networks. So forget language for a second. Forget any sort of ethnic targeting. We're the 5th most watched network. We believe that should earn our way onto most buy sheets to begin with, or at least earn our way to consideration. Then when you add to that 83% of our primetime audience doesn't watch a top 10 network in an average month, that means that not only are we 5th, but the audience we are delivering is exclusive. And those are two of the foundational pivot points that we use when talking to advertisers about our value. And those two things strike a chord. I will tell you that when you ask the question about how are we working with advertisers with this over the last number of years and related to rechanneling any of their other advertising commitments, what we found is that we had a couple of advertisers, big advertisers, that sort of fell in love with the concept of total market approach. And they felt that they could reach Hispanics through their English language campaigns, and they sort of defocused Spanish language and felt that they were already achieving it. What we've seen with many of those advertisers across multiple categories is their business results suffered. And in the last 18 months, we've seen a number of those advertisers return to us because they're making rational decisions and evaluations that their business suffered from those. And they're seeing, again, immediate benefit from that. And this includes, top 20 brands in the US. So it's really gratifying because we know that we deliver those results, and our advertisers know and measure that they know we are discreetly delivering results to them.
Are those conversations, starting in terms of like the demand and interest and kind of having those conversations? You said, it's a challenge anytime. Now, I assume anything is more challenging. But how do you expect like upfront negotiations to progress at this point? What are you, anticipating as it relates to those conversations?
Yeah, I was listening yesterday to your sessions. We did a business update yesterday and a thought leadership webinar after the conclusion of yours. But earlier I was listening, and I think that John Steinloff actually really typified it well. And that is, I think that there's going to be a little bit of a choppy market. I think that we're already having conversations with some people who their needs are really well defined, and I think they're still going to be in a June timeframe. I think there are others that would have normally moved in broadcast and just won't be ready in June, but they're going to be ready fairly soon after that or approximate to it. And then I think we're going to continue to do calendar upfronts that we've always done.
Right.
In speaking to all of our senior agency and client contacts, what my point has been, we've written 3-quarter deals, we've written 5-quarter deals, we write broadcast, we write calendar. We're here to meet their needs. Their timing is our timing. And so we're going to be flexible in how we do that and figuring out how we do business. I think it's really easy these days to try to get tied up or to get tied up in trying to issue a lot of terms. And the reality is that we're all going to have to kind of roll with this for a little while and not look to over-define things and just look to be able to remove obstacles to doing business together.
Gotcha. What do you think might be one or two of a longer term impacts of the pandemic on the TV ad industry?
There's two things that I'm sort of really impressed by, honestly. The first one is people's availability in this time when people are working remotely. I think we found that people are much more engaged and available to be able to have conversations. So I've been really impressed by that. And I think that that's actually accelerated business conversations. The second thing I'm really impressed by, and I guess it relates really to our teams at Univision, is, we went from one day being in the office to the next day, people working remotely. And yet we figured out how to make it work. And we figured out actually how to be pretty good at it. And I won't say that it was a light switch for the next day, but, within a week or two, we had people getting comfortable with it and trying to understand how to make the best of the situation. So I'm really proud of, I think certainly our team, but I think as an industry, I think people have pivoted really, really well through this.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thank you for joining us, and be well.
Hang in there. Thanks,
Thank
Jeanine.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. So we've spent most of the last 2 days hearing from ad sales leaders about how they're ready to strike upfront deals when clients are. Now we will hear from media buyers to get a look at how they expect deal making to proceed and how their clients really are evaluating the TV marketplace. I'm joined by David Campanelli, Executive VP and Chief Investment Officer at Horizon Media, Dani Benowitz, President of US Magna Global, and Catherine Sullivan, Chief Investment Officer for North America at Omnicom Media Group. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jeanine.
Good to see you all. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Jeanine.
So, in the first few weeks, we heard about marketers rapidly readjusting their media plans and pulling ads, of course. Are we seeing some of those brands start coming back? Have things, started to stabilize? Catherine, maybe we could start with you.
Sure. I think stabilize may be too strong of a word, but I do think that certain industries have been impacted less than others. And so therefore, I would use from our stable of clients, a State Farm who's done some really great work, changed their creative, leaned into things like The Draft and The Last Dance on ESPN. They've done work across a couple of other networks. So they've leaned in. Their business is more stable than some others. But I wouldn't say as a whole that the business is stable.
David, how about you? What have you seen from your client base?
Yeah, of course, it's definitely a mixed bag. There are the advertisers who, were able to get through this without too much business disruption. Those were certainly in the minority. I think the ones whose business has suffered, I think there has been a kind of found the bottom, so to speak, and things have not improved. But, and again, maybe stabilized is too strong a word, but at least we're at a not a good point because business is significantly down, but it's not continuing to drop. So I think that's helped at least understand what the next few months will look like. And so we can start to prepare for, things longer term down the road.
Yeah, Dani, what are you seeing? Of course, right now we're talking about options, third quarter options. We're hearing that there are some brands that, will unsurprisingly be taking advantage of those third quarter options. How much are you seeing them canceling commitments and kind of what does that all look like at this point?
Yeah, I think the word mixed bag is probably going to be something we're all going to say a bunch of times today. We definitely have clients that are going to take advantage and exercise their full option. Things are changing on a daily basis. So I think there are those who want to use the security they can right now and figure out what they need to do as things start to recover and as things start to pick up a little bit. So again, we're seeing a mixed bag. We have people who are canceling. We have very few people firming up, and we have some are doing sort of half of their cancellation.
Are cancellations different now than perhaps, the same time last year? Catherine, what are you seeing?
Since I've sat on both sides of the table, I've never seen, options like this, but I've also never seen anything like this in my career. So I don't think any of us have. This pandemic has really, I think as we've all keep saying, there are no winners, quite frankly, during this pandemic. There's just to what level of loss are you having? So yeah, I've never seen the type of options in 3Q that you're going to see this year. And I don't think probably most of the sellers have either.
David, is there any sort of indication of like how much money might be coming out of the marketplace at this point, or any sort of predictions of like how big of a hit the marketplace could take, in the third quarter?
Yeah, I've seen the 20 to 30% options number floated, and that doesn't sound crazy to me.
No.
What that means in pure dollars, I don't know.
I would agree.
I would agree too.
So we're talking about like a 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does this mean things are going to get worse before they get better? Anyone, Dani, if you want to jump in.
I think it depends if you're, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hi, Catherine.
No, I think it depends on, I think for TV, because of when the timing of the pandemic hit, I think from the network / big media companies, because options were already in, they were protected a little bit further than some of the other channels that we all negotiate against. So I think that they're getting hit later in the cycle and may take later to actually come back. But I don't think that 3Q, or 4Q is going to get much better. The balance, meaning that even forget about options, I don't know that you're going to see scatter in any capacity, offset what we're already seeing. And I don't see a lot of change for the back half of 2020 in general.
David, has scatter returned at all? We've heard different messages from sales folks. They're saying that scatter looks a little bit better and that there is some money coming in. What are you saying?
That certainly sounds optimistic to me.
Everyone sounded very optimistic. So.
Yeah, I think that's their job right now, to be optimistic. I think there have been isolated pockets, particularly around some of the specials and kind of big TV events that have been happening that have garnered a lot of attention and viewership. I think those that do have some money to spend or potentially sports money to reinvest, that's been kind of sitting on the sideline, are looking to take advantage of some of that stuff and really kind of capture some of that high profile specials that are going on. Outside of that, kind of your standard day-to-day spending, I think is minimal at best.
Yeah. So the phrase I keep hearing over the last days and just in the last couple of weeks or so from sales leaders is, we're ready to do business when you are. That may be true, of course, but even if marketers feel stable enough to make commitments, in the somewhat typical time frame. With all of the questions around like when productions can resume, uncertainty around live sports, how do you go about even striking deals when there are so many unknowns? Dani, you want to start?
Yeah, I think there's a lot we don't know. I think there are some things we do know. We saw Fox yesterday announce some of their fall slate. They're pushing back some of their summer schedule to the fall. I would imagine some of the other media partners are going to do the same. We know a little bit about the NFL season. Certainly we saw a look at the schedule, and there seems to be some time built in should that schedule start a little bit later. There's going to be television, right? So if you're going to have a need, there's going to be places to run. I think, it is our job at the agencies to manage schedules as we get closer to air, and we'll continue to do that.
And, flexibility, I guess, will be the big word that'll be thrown around. The networks are saying they're open and willing to be flexible. I think I've pretty much heard that from a lot of cases in terms of like the willingness to work together. But what would flexibility, or what could it mean as a potential deal point in negotiations, during the upfronts and moving forward? Catherine, maybe you want to take this first?
Sure. Look, I think flexibility, I used to think before this pandemic that flexibility was a very overused word, and I feel like we almost need to have a new definition for what the word flexibility means in this new world that we're living in. So I think flexibility, depending, again, I think the thing that we have to, when we think about flexibility will start at the industry that the particular client sits in and the impact that their industry has suffered through, as we've all suffered through this pandemic. So flexibility may mean that, someone needs to won't even have a clue about what their fourth quarter budgets look like until sometime much later than what's normal in terms of the normal August, September, that the media owners want to be flexible. I also think for some clients, it's, if they become more fluid, what is their flexibility then? When I say fluidity between all the media companies wanting more and more of the marketers' money to move to digital, then we need to figure out what that definition is. And in the digital world, with the IAB standards of 14 days out and 100%, you can get 100% of your money back. What does that mean as we start moving more money from a linear to digital perspective? And how does linear and digital work together better and actually figure out how those two worlds coexist?
Right. I want to talk about live sports for a bit. David, where have you been looking to capture the live, sports audiences that, are not watching sports currently? What places, whether TV or elsewhere, are you looking to find those audiences?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1,000,000 question for everyone, right? Where are all these sports dollars going? Where can they go? And the real answer is there is not a replacement for NBA finals. There's not a replacement for NFL, particularly if all sports are not happening. So there's no good answer to that. There's no single place where we can go and buy that same level of exposure, the same level of impact, the same level of fan engagement. There certainly are some areas, there's some e-gaming out there that's been popular. UFC just came back in pay-per-view, but UFC just came back. So there are some small areas, but really there's not that, next big, great place to move sports money. The reason why we're buying sports is for a particular reason, all the things that sports bring to the table. And we really can't recreate that other places.
Right.
And really to date, I think, by and large, all indications that we have is that most of the sports dollars that were canceled are going back to marketers. I mean, certainly some are being re-expressed, but initially NCAAs were canceled. There was a need that was right at the beginning of everything, and I think most marketers brought that money back to bottom line to be conservative and safe. And I think everyone's waiting to see what happens with NBA and baseball and NHL. So there hasn't been a massive re-expression of that stuff because it's a wait and see, but also there isn't that, great next place to move it.
Sure. I mean, the NFL, last week, of course, released its schedule, said that they were looking to start on September 10th. Does this give you more confidence? Is it still a wait and see? Like, how are you, NFL obviously being the biggest part of, I think, all of this, how are you thinking about football at this point?
Hoping and praying every night that it happens. Safely, happens safely.
Every day.
As a viewer
And
and
college
an
football.
advertiser.
Exactly.
Well, I think I didn't know which one you said, college football, but college football to me seems even like the bigger question mark and fewer unknowns. Yeah, Catherine,
Correct.
you know, how are you thinking about how do you do deals then around football at this point?
Look, I think that, you know, there's the football piece of it. If I was going to bet on one sport that's going to figure it out, I always say like Roger would move them all to the moon if he had to in order to get the season to actually play. So, I mean, I think if there's some version of the NFL going to happen, I can't imagine a world that the NFL does not come back in some shape or form. I think there's a much bigger question mark around college sports and specifically college football in the fourth quarter. And, you know, I think a lot of it's going to be state driven, and we've got the schools and the chancellors, and there's just so many unknowns, I think, around college. But I do think, to your question, how do you negotiate? I mean, look, you're just going to have a ton of caveats. And if this doesn't come, and you're going to have to, you know, you may not know some of this stuff until, you know, August or September. I mean, look, the NBA just said that they're giving themselves, I think there's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes at the NBA, but they certainly gave themselves a really long window now before they need to respond. So we're just going to have to, you know, do what we normally do. And I think the one thing about our business that's very unique is the way that we trust each other, and the fact that we do all these multi-billion-dollar deals with handshake agreements. And I think that we're going to have to, the word trust is going to have to really come into play about who do you trust and who are your partners.
Now the handshake agreement is all virtual, right?
Janine, can I add to that too? Because it goes back to your earlier question. I think this is where flexibility takes on a whole other meaning, right? So flexibility is not just about budgeting, it's about timing. And I think, you know, some of the old norms of us being done in July and being ready and knowing where our schedule is going to be pushed. And, you know, I think we'll see more and more coming closer to when we actually have the right answers.
Right. So in terms of, it could just be in scatter, it could be calendar, it could be just whenever those answers actually happen and there's more that's known.
It could be a mixed bag. Sorry to say it again, but yeah, it's going to be a mix of all three.
So the other thing that, you know, we were hearing a lot of the last couple of days is the conversation around innovation in advertising. I've had this conversation with all of you, I'm sure, you know, ad nauseum over the years. But at this point, you know, are, you know, clients willing to experiment in different types of advanced advertising, targeting, attribution, all of these things that the industry has been talking about the last couple of years? Is it time to experiment in those areas, or is it more of the need to just like do business, keep things afloat, and like stick to the tried and true? David, you want to start that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's still obviously going to be a part of what we're doing, and probably an increasingly larger part of what we're doing. But I don't think it's priority number one right now. Priority number one is figuring out all the stuff we just talked about, when we should be trying to strike deals, how long that will take before we know enough information to be able to make intelligent deals. So I think there's so many more things we're juggling right now that to some extent that'll probably get pushed to the background a little bit, but it's a major part of what we're doing. It's a major part of what our brands want to do, and we'll absolutely include that moving forward. I think reinventing the wheel on some of that stuff and you know, making it take the big leaps forward that it needs to is going to be tougher this year. So it might be a little bit more of continuing what we've done this year and expand where we're able to. But again, there's just a lot more moving pieces this year. There's a lot more going on that we have to consider. So it'll be more challenging.
Right. One of the things I had heard from the network side prior to all of this was this look to, you know, move beyond the traditional 18 to 49, 25 to 54 demos and maybe push for like a P2 plus or something like that. You know, Dani, is that something that might move forward, or something you think that there's a willingness on the client side to try?
I mean, it is a conversation that we have internally all the time. I actually think now more than ever, moving towards audiences is even going to be more important. And really, we use the word high value audience, and truly hitting that audience that's most receptive to your advertising in the right place and the right time should be the way we start to think about allocating our dollars and frankly, trying to do business more so than ever. We talk about, we are planning, we're using all this data to plan, and we sort of stop short at the activation. And I know we've taken strides, and we've got targetable TV, and we're doing data-driven linear, but I think this is where we start to accelerate the conversation and make the change while we have the chance to do it.
Catherine, your thoughts on this? Is this something that you think will impede advancements, or maybe be a catalyst to move quicker than we already were?
Yeah, I think it's a catalyst for us and for our client base across Omnicom. I think we've been a lot of testing and experimenting over the last 3 to 4 years since I've been in this job. And I think now is the time where we have this moment, and because there is more time and there isn't the rush, that what I'm really hoping that we can do for our clients at Omnicom is, I don't want to be back here with you this time next year and still have the exact same issues that we had prior to this situation. And to use the term, never let a good crisis go to waste, I do want to use this time to really, help our clients think about, look, there's so much to Dave's points, what we've been talking about. There's a lot that we're all dealing with in the here and now, but we have to lift our heads up to what do we want and what we know we can do better as an industry. And now is the time to accelerate that and to move to audiences, to take a look at all the ad innovation that's out there, so that we have a healthier business moving forward, that our clients' money is used smarter and more efficiently and effectively. And I just think it would change the conversations from an agency perspective, that we'd be with our clients about the results of their marketing dollars.
So one follow-up to that then, what is one piece of innovation, or what is one area that maybe, Catherine, you hope will change during all of this, that maybe this could spur to move faster than it had been?
I think if we can start to really move to audiences, and whether you're looking at P2 plus or some version of that, my hope is that I do think the one thing that's not going to one new norm that I think that has absolutely happened during this crisis is the acceleration of streaming. I don't think that's going to be something that decelerates post. I think it's going to continue. To accelerate, and because of that, I think that if the linear network, specifically as it pertains to entertainment, do not use this time to actually figure out what the correct commercial loads look like and what the correct formats for advertising look like in entertainment, specifically in Prime, I think that you're just not even going to have Prime in a few years from now, because you're just going to buy it on streaming. I personally just can't imagine a world that I go back from an entertainment capacity and go back and start, watching 16, 18 minutes of commercials in an hour. I just don't see it ever happening again. So I think that we have to push to fix it and make the industry healthy.
So on the streaming, of course, during this time, and this is something we would have been talking about 4 months ago, whether or not this happened or not, the acceleration of streaming, though, during this time with people home and watching more content and all of that, how has that behavior influencing how you're thinking about, shifting dollars, with Peacock launching this year, HBO Max coming up, later this month, Disney Plus, of course, is not ad supported, but there is so much conversation around the OTT space. What does that mean for how you're, shifting and moving dollars? Maybe David, you want to start that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if I agree. I think what's happening now is only going to kickstart, or start's not the right word because it's been ongoing, but accelerate the streaming usage, OTT usage, and there really is no kind of going back from here. But if you're just planning now on shifting to the streaming space, OTT space, you've missed the boat. It's something that has obviously been clear for several years that this is coming, and I'm sure everyone here has already made those shifts. So it's really a continued migration, and we're always trying to stay out ahead of that consumption trend. But this is something we've been tracking for several years now, and trying to stay ahead of, where this is going. And really pegged 2020, even before this, as a kind of an explosion year in streaming and acceleration of ratings declines as well. With the launch of Disney Plus last fourth quarter, with the launch of HBO Max and Peacock, it's all just exacerbating the continued trend towards not just digital, it's just delayed viewing in general that's happening, outside that Nielsen standard C3, C7 window.
The one thing I find interesting with the launch of some of these, whether it was Peacock or Quibi, also recently, a lot of them are coming out, these like pretty big sponsorship deals, and they feel like ways to get in so that you can kind of experiment, test, and sort of help them build up what their ad model might look like. Is there an appetite on the client side to do that kind of experimentation right now and take these bigger swings, perhaps bigger sponsorship commitments to do like some of these launches?
I think it goes back to the earlier question, depending on where you're sitting as a client and where your category is sitting. I think some of these sponsorships have had hefty price tags, and right now some people can't handle that. Some people who are feeling better about where we are today may want to take a dive, just perhaps not at the size we're doing. I think it's all over the place. One thing for sure is that you can't not notice that, you know, we know that by the end of the year, connected TV viewing is going to be probably up 36% versus last year. Before we got,
I think Dani froze or I froze. I think it's Dani.
So,
Okay, we'll wait for her to come back. I'm sure she'll be back.
I think so.
One of the other things I'm thinking about is sort of like what the long-term impacts of the pandemic could be on the TV, ad industry. Anything that you think, might end up being sort of a long-term consequence of what we're going through right now. Catherine, you want to weigh in on that?
I think I sort of said it before. I do think one of the long-term consequences is, I think the ad loads is specifically one of them. I think that the flight to digital.
Can we talk about ad load for a second? Because, I think everyone is talking about the efforts, especially right now, to reduce ad loads. Are you actually seeing that happening? Are you seeing lower ad loads in prime time right now?
Not necessarily it depends on which network. I think NBCU has tried in a few places, more in their cable assets. Certainly you saw it around The Last Dance, and you saw it with ESPN around the draft, and you saw the results. I mean, you saw the lift. Quite frankly, you're also seeing it in news, not based on the fact that they probably, whether it's CNN or pick the network for news, but because of the amount of break-ins that they consistently have from local and national, they've obviously had reduced ad loads, and not that their ratings wouldn't have been up, but I guess that it would be interesting to really take a look at what's that impact on top of increased viewership based on the situation.
Gotcha. Any other long-term
She's
impacts?
back.
Oh, Dani's back. Hi, Dani.
sorry, I got kicked out.
Dani's back.
Any long-term impacts of the pandemic on the ad industry, if you want to weigh in on that one.
Long-term impacts. I think we said it earlier. I think long-term impacts, we're going to make some serious changes now, and they're going to be good and revolutionary, and they're going to move us forward for sure.
David, thoughts?
Yeah, I think, obviously we've talked about flexibility, and I think flexibility will probably replace data as the most overused word in the industry moving forward. But and I think someone mentioned it before, but the stark difference between our ability to get out of inventory, placed inventory, and other media types, all other media types basically, not just digital, but local and audio, compared to national television, national linear television, is stark. And I think that definitely has to change to some extent moving forward. And I really think and hope, I'm actually looking forward to some extent a different upfront where deals are done probably more client-based, individual client-based and client-focused. That's kind of how it used to be back when my beard wasn't so gray. And I think that benefits everyone all around. I think it benefits clients for sure. I think it benefits networks to get, be able to bring more customized solutions to clients. That some of that gets lost in the, agency network 3-week negotiation window that we typically have. So if that happens this year, which I think it will, and if parts of that can continue forward, and we're not all fighting over quarter points and half points, and kind of bring more creative deal making to the table, I think that'll be a positive thing moving forward.
Great. Well, thanks, David, Dani, and Catherine. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Well, that concludes Ad Age's TV Pivot. Thank you all so much for sticking with us and joining us. While there's no doubt been a massive amount of uncertainty in the marketplace, we hope you at least walk away from the last 2 days of conversation with a clearer picture on how the industry slowly, but maybe surely, can move forward. And here at Ad Age, we've spent a lot of time thinking about disruption, and in combing our archives to mark Ad Age's 90th anniversary, what became evident is the TV industry is one of the best examples of a business that has continually been tested. And certainly none of us have been tested in the way that we are now, but maybe this time can serve as a catalyst to revamp the commercial experience and the way the business is conducted. Thanks again to our sponsors, Facebook, Roku, Viacom CBS, and WGN America. And thank you to our Ad Age crew, Alfred Mascaroni, Anna Sakula, Max Sternlicht, and Elise Liffring for making this live stream happen. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And to end our event, we will hear from our president and publisher, Josh Golden, and our sponsor, Facebook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In the Hot Seat. I'm Josh Golden, the president and publisher of Ad Age. I'm so excited to have with me Eric Geisler, who is the director of North American Agency Partnerships for Facebook. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here.
You are welcome. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Facebook and your role in particular.
Sure. My role at Facebook, I oversee the North American Agency channel. So I work with all the different ad agencies, large and small, across North America. Secondarily, I focus on our video offering at Facebook, especially because it's such an important part of our offering to advertising agencies. So that's been my main focus for the past few years as well. So those two things, generally speaking.
I'm curious, in your role, what are you seeing as themes that were really critical that you felt you wanted to pull out?
Absolutely. So as we've been looking at the video marketplace for the past few years, and myself in particular, I've had a lot of intellectual curiosity and I'm a lifelong learner in what's been going on. And so what I love is I'd call it renewed energy for innovation from everybody that I've heard speak the past few days. They've spoken about challenges that they've had, how we got here. Are we still in this place in the context of things such as obviously the upfronts or broadcast versus counter? You're hearing a lot of this or that, this or that. And I think it's just really interesting that people are asking a ton of questions. And I think as a trend, that's something you're going to continue to see. As we move through the different questions people are asking, I think you're going to say, well, what's going to happen next? And I think that's like the big question is more about prediction about what's going to happen next. And there are a lot of different predictions. I think the trend that I saw was less of should we do this or that? And I think the general theme that I'm feeling is a lot of and. So advertisers aren't talking about, and the people that are speaking aren't talking about, is it broadcast year or calendar year? They're saying how much of this and how much of that. So it's truly an and. Digital versus traditional, those types of things. General targeting, agent demo, and more precision or advertising targeting. So I think those are a lot of the themes, and I just love the and that was kind of woven through all of them.
I was talking with my wife about this earlier. We were thinking about how the business of marketing and advertising is so much about optimism, that are hoping for for everything to sort of go back. But I believe it's much more forward momentum that's going to drive what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with all that. And I think the other part of our optimism is I believe everyone in this industry genuinely loves and believes in advertising's role in business, whether it's business turnaround or business success. And so what we're all focused on together is how do we make advertising the thing that gets business back on track? Yeah, I know from speaking to CMOs, that's not the hardest conversation. We already believe in advertising. I think we have to convince the CFOs that advertising is the place that you should actually lean into. And that's what I'm excited about as well.
Yeah, thinking about kind of, what you've been hearing and your role as an industry executive, what are you excited about from, what you're hearing? And then as a consumer, I'm interested in how you're perceiving, the world around you that's changing and how you're operating differently.
Yeah, so I think as an executive or in the industry, what I'm starting to hear and I'm excited about is all these different choices about what we could focus on or optimize our business for. In the past, I think it was a little more consistent of what we'd focus on. So if you're doing an upfront deal, you wanted to get really great pricing, you wanted to get put your money forward and have it work for you. And I think price was the thing that you're optimizing for. But I think what's going to happen is some really interesting, challenging conversations about what matters most to a certain brand or to a certain company, and what matters most right now. Maybe something that matters is different what matters most in a year from now. And so I love that conversation because it really raises some important things and it will challenge us to make some harder decisions than I think we've had to make in the past. And that's generally a good thing for business.
Right.
As a consumer, for a lot of people that thought that they had everything at their disposal, from convenience, from packages arriving the next day, whether you needed that or not. I think there's a lot of new conveniences and things that we've gotten back to. So on a personal level, I am most excited about learning how to spend more time with my family, to be honest with you.
That's a good call.
It's hard to juggle. And
Yeah,
I think we're getting a good glimpse into what that looks like. And I'm not going to be able to let go of that. I don't want to. I think a lot of people are with me on that. But even things like in-store pickup and things like that, which were probably more in the fringes of technical experiences, are becoming the norm. And it's not that awkward. And it's not awkward for me to go to a fine restaurant and take food out, where I have typically left that to fast casual type of establishment. So I think just those types of changes are going to be pretty meaningful, even if they just happen a little bit more than they had in the past. So I'm excited about that as a consumer and what else that breeds.
Yeah, I agreed. Just as a quick reminder, I want to mention that all the content from Ad Age's TV Pivot is going to be available for you to watch on adage.com. So you can check that out there at any time. As you're watching this, and you can kind of peek back at things that we discussed earlier. So I want to pivot to, which is my new buzzword, linear versus digital reach, and how, using those words, even the vernacular is becoming a little bit antiquated. But I'm curious about how Facebook is attracting audiences, and how basically I think in some capacity you're redefining, that for today's world.
We're trying to, and I think what one of the speakers yesterday actually spoke about was focusing on what the different channels and properties are good at. What Facebook has always been really good at is social connection. And so when we look at why people come to Facebook to watch video, there's really 2 or 3 different stats I think are really important. Over 90% of people come to Facebook to watch video to discover new points of interest, which is a little bit different than some of the networks that are saying, I'm interested in this sporting event or that sporting event, and so I want to consume more of that content. People actually come to our platforms to discover, and they always have. The newsfeed is the ultimate discovery engine, if you will.
Yeah,
another.
I had a moment this past weekend where I was making a sushi roll, and I entertained my Facebook friends with, here's how you make sushi. By the way, it's easier than it looks, but or harder than it looks. But it's a great opportunity for connecting, with an audience that is deeply engaged in, I guess, what's going on in the Golden household.
I think that's interesting because it dovetails into the second thing that 80% of people are trying to connect with other individuals in a social connection level. So they're trying to find people that have common interests and really build community. So those are 2 things that I think video has always done, but on our platforms in particular, we have a pronounced focus on those 2 things.
Right.
And the third thing that's really nice is over 94% of people actually share videos that they're looking at and watching. So you have all those different pieces, and I think it really builds into community and what Facebook video does a little bit differently than what some other platforms do.
Right. I think, Eric, one of the things that I always like to ask, with a person who's responsible for managing agency relationships is, what best practice should they be following that maybe they are, obviously the world around us is endlessly changing. So what information can you share with the brand marketers and the agencies that are watching about how best they can take advantage of the infrastructure that's, that you're making available to them?
Yeah, I think so. 2 things. One is not new, but it's actually coming into much more of the forefront, is a focus on business outcomes. I think it's always been a very buzzwordy thing. I think advertisers and agencies alike have really wanted to grasp and move towards that. I think now they have the opportunity, when every dollar has to work super hard for every single advertiser, that we're going to get the opportunity to focus more on business outcomes. So that would be thing 1. Thing 2, I think, will be incrementality and unique reach. I think whether, and a lot of the people you spoke with the past 2 days have spoken about this, whether that's through measuring cross-platform with a lot more accuracy and deduping reach, or more of the precision marketing or precision targeting and advanced targeting sorts of options like the ones that we're offering. I think those are really important just to make sure every dollar works super hard for our clients.
Yeah, I think that's that incremental reach, or that measurement piece, is so important that it's really hard to do. Although now with the streaming platforms offering what they're offering, it seems like it's a very accessible opportunity. One of the things that I've been discussing endlessly with my colleagues and industry executives I get to speak to a lot is the things that are changing around us, and the things that I'm happy about, and the things I'd love to go back. I want to get your opinion on this, Eric, because I think it's important to share it. What thing do you hope stays? That we've all this effort we made into innovating, what do you hope stays, and what would you love to just say, like, I'm really glad to give that up? For example, I'd love to give up my office chair. which is not really an office chair. So I'm hopeful.
I'd like to get an office chair. But I think the hunger for innovation, I really hope we don't forget how hungry and thirsty we were for change and innovation right now. We maintain that. It's good for the industry. It's great for agencies in particular. It's great for every platform, large, small, linear, traditional, digital. Innovation is a great thing. And I don't want us to lose that hunger and thirst for it. And then on the one thing I'd be okay giving up is the lack of the ability to get a good haircut. I think we a lot. So that's
my
more
wife just cut my hair 3 times. I feel like I got a look going now.
I can't wait to get a good haircut. So that's the thing.
Eric, that's great. I want to thank you for joining me in the hot seat. You did a great job. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Geisler from Facebook, thank you so much for joining me. You did great.
Thank you. Stay safe.
You too. A huge thank you to Eric Geisler for that conversation. And of course, an enormous thank you to Ad Age's senior editor, Jeanine Poggi, for spearheading this amazing 2-day event. And of course, to the entire edit staff and the entire staff of Ad Age for making this event happen so seamlessly. A quick call out to Max Sternlicht as well as Alfred Mascaroni for pulling off, and Anna Sekula for the amazing work that they have done to make this event happen so seamlessly. A lot of pieces pulled together to make this happen. Just a quick tease for some future events that we're doing very soon. We have Ad Age's Future of Creativity event happening during the week of June 15th. With brands, agency leaders, and technology partners all discussing how creativity is evolving in this changed space. And our next retail event is happening during the week of June 22nd. Will be formatted something like this. You can stay tuned to adage.com/events so you can see, be updated on those future events as well as information that's there for it. We are sending out a piece of research that I'd love for you all to respond to so you can fill it out and understand, we can understand what you loved and what we can improve upon as we're sort of moving forward. Of course, I want to thank our amazing sponsors that have made this event all possible: Facebook, Roku, Viacom, CBS, and WGN America. As the publisher of Ad Age, I just want to offer you all a special thank you for tuning in for these 2 days. It's been wonderful, the engagement, and it's been more than I could have possibly have expected. And I'm just thrilled that we had the benefit of offering this content and information to you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.